Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar that we are going to be driving today. As data streaming and Kafka become central to your operations and your real-time decisions and your AI pipelines, the cost of downtime, breaches, misconfigurations, stuff like that has never been higher, right? So with this session, we are trying to break down what enterprise-grade Kafka security looks like in 2025. My name is Jorge Ruiz. I'm going to be hosting you today with my colleague here, Mike. We are going to cover, first of all, we are going to start with giving a bit of context on why security matters now more than ever. Then we'll cover some of the common scenarios that we see out there in terms of what are the costs of ignoring Kafka security. Then Mike will walk us through some of the things that we see the leaders in the enterprise doing in terms of Kafka security and how Conduktor can help you. And he will show us a nice demo focused on encryption. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. There's a lot of stuff I want to get off my chest, share with the wider world, and hopefully make the world a little bit better place by making security easier to do.
That's great. You guys can probably see a question and a chat box on the right at the bottom right. So please feel free to use that. Tell us a bit more about you, where you are connecting from today. You can also ask questions, and hopefully at the end of the session we'll have some time to cover some of those. Hopefully Mike will cover them mainly, right?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are attending the webinar for a reason, so I want to hear, how we can make this better for you guys, because you guys obviously have pressing questions. So feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get to them.
Great. So okay, let's crack on. And we want to start by defining or giving a bit of context on why Kafka security matters now more than ever, right? What we are seeing is that data streaming is becoming, it's not a niche thing anymore. It's core infrastructure for organizations like yours, right? And for some of the leading organizations out there. And in fact, according to the latest data streaming report by Confluent, they could see, they survey thousands of people across the IT leaders across the world, and they see that 86% of them now see data streaming as a top strategic priority. And that's not surprising anymore. What is truly surprising is what they are prioritizing in terms of investments alongside data streaming. 94% of them see security as the top investment for 2025. And 84 of them, they also see data management and data governance as a key investment point for them, right? So we can see that both ranked even higher than AI initiatives in terms of investment, and that tells you everything you need to know, considering that everyone is thinking about AI these days. So it's pretty clear that companies are investing in the data streaming, but they're also demanding the trust and control over the data that streaming powers. So essentially, it's becoming a board level concern. If we look at what are the main initiatives or the main things that are driving this increase in interest and investment, we see that obviously data streaming is already powering many critical processes, but now it's also meant to fuel AI models, right? And we see more and more companies interested in doing so. It's also fueling real-time decisions. Is collaborating with partners. Actually, according to Gartner, organizations that share data externally with their partners can generate up to 3 times more economic benefit than those who don't. Right. So using streaming to proactively share data with trusted partners can actually drive competitive advantage and real revenue growth. Right. So you are not now you are not just protecting data inside your walls, but you are also enabling that external data sharing, that real-time processing, even agentic-driven automation, right? And in that context, security has to scale with the speed and complexity and the ability for us as an organization to adapt, recover, and operate under pressure is going to be very critical when it comes to our Kafka architecture. And obviously, organizations like yours are not just securing Kafka because it's the right thing to do, but because at the end of the day, you are being forced to do it by a growing number of regulations, right? That keep increasing every year. Kafka environments that lack encryption or access control, observability, or other things like data lineage can put you at risk, not just technically, but also legally and financially, right? We see these fines going out every year. In the case of GDPR or the data protection regulation in the European Union, if you stream any personal data from EU citizens, GDPR says that you need encryption, you need access control, you need the ability actually to delete personal information upon request as well. If you are handling healthcare data that is flowing through your Kafka systems, HIPAA demands that it stays protected. It needs to be traceable. It needs to be accessible only by those who are authorized. California state has its own law to now gives consumers visibility into how their data is moving and how it's flowing in the organization. So your Kafka needs the traceability and the audit trail to comply with that. And then we've got a couple regulations that are a bit more recent in the European Union. The most recent one probably is the AI Act, which says that if you are feeding AI with Kafka data, then you're going to have to prove that those inputs are governed, they are explainable, they are high quality, stuff like that. In the case of financial institutions, DORA mandates that you need operational resilience, right? Which means that Kafka downtime is going to put you at regulatory risk. So overall, we see all these different components pushing companies to invest more and more on security, and especially around their data streaming infrastructure. So what does it mean what is the real impact that some of these security gaps can have in your operations and in your business? We have created this table that you can see here, where we can walk through what actually happens when Kafka isn't governed properly, right? And as you can see on that list on the left-hand side, they are pretty common failures that are not really rare incidents that you hardly see, right? These are recurrent risks that we see across many enterprises and across many of our customers. First, we've got things like misconfigured access, where there is no fine-grained or role-based access control in place, and obviously that leads to unauthorized access to sensitive topics, right? Think about that engineer that ends up having access to a topic that has credit card numbers, for example, or where we see situations when there is no real encryption enforcement, or there is not the right approach. There is not a centrally managed approach to encryption, which can expose companies to compliance violations and PII leaks, right, or sensitive information. Then we also see all sorts of failover processes where there is a lot of disruption, right? Where teams need to update their applications one by one to connect to the backup cluster when there is some downtime on the production cluster, and that results in obviously very painful downtime, broken SLAs, and at the end of the day, lost revenue. In the case of lack of audit trail, that's going to mean that we lose that traceability, and we are going to fail at compliance. We are not going to be able to do those investigations when those regulators require us to do it. Then we've got cases of a schema drift, where without the right governance and a schema validation, we are going to be breaking pipelines, feeding unreliable data to our AI initiatives and to our reports and dashboards. And then in the case of when we overdo it, right, when we create these overly strict policies, then it's also going to have the consequence of a slowing development and even risking the creation of shadow IT. That's Mike, something that you've seen across some of the customers of your previous life?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It drives me nuts too, because like not only do I get to like be part of the development of these systems, I'm a customer of these systems. So like I can already tell what's kind of going on behind the scenes, particularly for like overly strict policies is probably like one of the most common examples I experience like as a customer of a system, whereby like I'll log in, I'll check my account, and I'll see like certain data that's my own data is encrypted to me, and I'm like, guys, I own this data. I should be able to see it. I don't know why you're presenting me good view of my own data. And like I just know the conversation that probably went on behind the scenes where it's like the developers are like, well, that'll add 3 weeks to the development cycle and it'll cost us, an extra $100,000 or whatever. Can you live without it or can you live with this thing? And it's all those little compromises that create, porous security and things like that. And same thing for the disruption of the failover process. Like on the professional side, I've seen firsthand a lot of these continuity operations, these as it relates to security, not be implemented particularly well. And so, of course, there's like the direct cost of like missing orders and like the production system being down. But like if you have this setup whereby you have, I don't know, 40 or 50 different application teams, every time there's a failover, all of those client applications, one by one, have to be reconfigured to the new failover cluster if they haven't if they don't have that logic built in to the application already. So like it can
Mhm.
just be this like really expensive, time-consuming process. And so you can just kind of get a whiff of where all these like poor security practices are because they don't have the right architecture in place.
Yeah. No, and actually, we would like to see if this resonates with you guys. We like to see what is top of mind for everyone here. What risks do you care the most about? Right. Let me see if I can activate a quick poll that we've got in place. Can you guys see it? I think I quick on published. I don't know if you guys can see it right now.
Yeah, just let us know if you see it in the chat.
But yeah, it seems that you guys can see it. And hopefully you can also see the results live as they come in. But yeah, the idea is we just wanted to check which risks are you most focused on reducing in your Kafka environment, right? What's really keeping you up at night when it comes to securing Kafka? Is it around unauthorized access across teams or services? Is that lack of visibility into the data flows? Is the leakage of sensitive information, non-compliance? Is it more about that operational downtime due to failover? Or kind of those DR gaps? Is it around how do I secure the data that I want to share with my partners, or is it more around not trusting the data that I'm using to train my AI models or to use them during AI inference? Just leave a couple more seconds. I can see that there's a good spread across all of them. But it seems that failover is the winner right now, right? It seems that almost a third of you guys are mainly concerned around operational downtime due to failover, and that kind of aligns pretty well with what we see. Mike, do you want to talk about the results a bit?
I don't think I have access to the results, so let me take a look, see if I can find them real quick.
Yeah, so what I see is mainly right now is all around operational downtime. Then
Okay.
access control is a big concern for 14% of people here.
Yep. Okay.
Also,
Yeah, I can see it now.
lack of visibility, yeah, non-compliance. Okay, hopefully you can see them now.
Yeah. Yeah. So the downtime and failover, it, it definitely speaks to the continuity of operations, which we'll speak to later. And unauthorized access is kind of what the demo will be speaking to later as well. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on these polls that ring true to me, and we see in our conversations out in the field all the time, where people are really want to have a really good failover solution because they realize how important it is to handle that live streaming data.
Hmm. All right, let's move forward, if you don't mind.
All
Uh,
right.
and let's try to define a bit more what we mean by enterprise grade Kafka security, right? What actually looks like, and how can Conductor support it? And let's what we are going to do is we're going to start with how to secure the flow of all this sensitive data through Kafka, so it's protected but also compliant and ready to share externally or to send it to our AI pipelines with confidence, right? As we were saying earlier, Kafka is already powering some of the most sensitive data flows in the enterprise and some very critical processes. But many environments still lack the controls to secure and govern that data in a cost-effective manner, right? So we see it all the time, whether customers are migrating to the cloud, and then obviously you need to secure the data and encrypt it before you send it out there, or whether you are ensuring regulatory compliance, or you want to share data with partners and want to prevent sending them PII without being encrypted, or whether you are even doing things like responding to data deletion requests to comply with the GDPR. The common theme in all these use cases is that compliance isn't just about storage or about infrastructure, but it's about the data flow, right? So, Mike, can you help us understand a bit better how the leading companies out there and how Conductor helps you solve this?
Yeah, yeah, and when we talk about encryption, we tend to talk about it from like a technical perspective or maybe a compute overhead perspective. It generally just ends up being a more technical conversation, but like really what we're talking about is just table stakes for security. We got to make sure that the right people have access to the right data at the right time. But what we're finding is that it technically, from a technical perspective, it's actually not that difficult of a problem to implement. However, providing the organizational controls to do that at the right time, at the right place, is actually incredibly difficult. And so the things like the regulatory compliance for things like GDPR, for example, only really serve to focus that organizational difficulty. Or let's say for the organizations, maybe there's a competitor in your market that's actually pulling ahead by building an external data sharing marketplace. Um, that's one of those things where, again, security and encryption, that's all kind of table stakes for working and building a data exchange with partners. So kind of what we're seeing is like securing the flow, it's table stakes. Sure, technically it can be done, especially at an organizational level where maybe you have one or two streaming pipelines. But where organizations really start to see a difference and a return on their investment is when they start to build hundreds, if not thousands, of streaming data pipelines. And to manage that stuff at scale becomes incredibly difficult. So there's often key capabilities these organizations are lacking. So maybe they can implement end-to-end encryption on their own. That gets very unwieldy at scale, especially when it comes to implementing fine-grained access controls on those data pipelines at scale and providing topic level access. Same thing for KMS support. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's wild to me that we have this client-side encryption mindset. If you want to have security, generally you want to have uniformity and standards and policies, and devolving that security to teams to make their own choices is just like pricking 1,000 little holes in the walls that are supposed to protect and support you. And then finally, you're supposed to generally operate off of policy, and organizations lack the central points of control to inject policy and actually have those policies provide those controls. And then finally, there's no centralized logging typically for all this stuff as well. I mean, typically some folks do a few things in Datadog. They might do a few things with whatever cloud service they're using, but there's no centralized point of audit logging for all of the actions that are taken across all of the different Kafka clusters. And it just ends up being this tremendous overhead for what we're seeing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, typically how encryption is done today, let's spend some time talking about that. because it's crazy to me that we have this really large focus on client side encryption. Just the KMS credentials governance is crazy. So like, if you have a bunch of different application teams, they all get to decide what KMS they're using. Maybe they don't get to decide what KMS, maybe it's all centralized, but they still get to decide on how that encryption is implemented. There's no naming conventions or standardized regex expressions of what needs to be protected. So it's very difficult to enforce a centralized policy. And there's zero standardization, especially when you have some applications on prem and some in the cloud. There's no standardization whatsoever. And so, as you can imagine, it's one of those things where you can be successful until you reach a certain scale. And so, for those organizations that provide an amazing customer experience where it's intuitive, it's reactive, the customers are very happy with what's going on, they see and they're able to interact with whatever service you're offering. Typically, you have to operate at a very high scale and a very high level of competency as well. And doing that requires security is kind of table stakes. And if you can't get the standardization and the enforcement of these controls done right, for all of the streaming applications that make up the service, it's not going to work well. And then more importantly, as you try and apply a more fine-grained filter to those controls, like let's say you want to do field level encryption rather than payload encryption. Well, field level encryption is going to reduce the compute workload associated with that, but it also increases the application's difficulties with applying role-based access controls. So typically, encryption is computationally, from a computer science perspective, pretty easy to do. But like organizationally, doing that stuff at scale is incredibly difficult. So what we talk about with conductors, we have a centralized capability to provide encryption, and not just encryption, but like a host of data security policies and capabilities that can be applied at a central control point. So if you want to provide centralized encryption, you want to standardize your KMSs, you want to onboard your applications without code changes, or let's say you want to update or change encryption policies with little to no downtime. Conductor provides those capabilities. And more importantly, the application teams are generally on board, is what I'm finding in the field, because you're saying, hey, application developers, we're going to reduce the technical complexity and your workloads for your applications because we now have security as a responsibility that we can kind of help take off the table for you. There's some other security concerns maybe, but the list definitely got a whole lot shorter. And now we have increased observability and protections. So what I'll do is I'll just jump into a quick demo to kind of share with you guys what we got going on.
So what I have here, as you can see on the screen, is a representation of the topics inside the Conduktor gateway from the perspective of Conduktor gateway. I also have a second tab here, as you can see denoted by this blue Kafka icon in the upper left-hand corner, the view from the Kafka cluster. Now, ideally, the gateway instances, which are effectively a proxy that sit in front of Kafka, are designed to be transparent to the producing and consuming applications. But the proxy allows you to centrally implement some governance policies, some security policies, and in particular, encryption. And what we allow users to do is to implement some fine-grained encryption controls. So what I want to represent really is that we have two topics. We have customers_JSON, and you can see both through either the lens of just the local Kafka cluster or from the perspective of the gateway proxy. And what we'll do is we'll kind of alternate between the two to kind of show you how that data gets represented. So right now, the data is represented under this universal masking policy. So you can see here that, like, even though I'm technically an admin of the platform, the data for things like email and last name are currently masked. Even though I'm an admin and technically, God mode for the platform is turned on, so to speak. So what I'll do actually is I'll go over here. I'll go over to our data policies, and I'll add an exception to this particular data policy. So let's say you need to comply with something like GDPR, PCI DSS. You can build, the associated masking rules or tag the information and its appropriate risk level if you need to. And what we'll do is we'll start to exclude groups or users from that policy. So since I'm the admin, go ahead and add the admin as an update to the policy to follow that particular exception. I'll go ahead and I'll refresh the page. And now you can see things like the actual customer's email and things like that. And that'll be helpful to represent the encryption capabilities that we'll later apply as an additional data policy. So even though technically the platform has the encryption capability and I'm the admin, you also have an additional capability to implement data masking. And those data masking policies can be applied to anybody in the platform regardless of their role. And you get to choose what exceptions meet that policy. Now, when it comes to actually encrypting the data rather than just masking it, what we do is we have this capability using interceptors inside the gateway proxy. So what we'll do is we'll add a new interceptor. But what I want to really leave you with is that we have a whole host of governance capabilities, and this is what really sets Conduktor apart in the marketplace. So we have a number of policies around data consumption, data security, doing some chaos testing, doing some caching, and other optimizing. But what we'll do is we'll just do some field level encryption, since that's another unique and differentiating capability. So what we want to do is we actually want to do some encryption for a specific group of last names on the customer JSON particular data set. So what I have here is I have a encryption policy already built out. So I'll copy and paste that here into the window. And what you'll see here is we have a kind of standardized plugin class. It just follows like a JSON or YAML style format. And there's really two field names that I want to encrypt: the last name and the email, under the same policy that was previously data masked. And what we'll do is we'll actually use a KMS, and it doesn't matter what KMS you want to use, whether it's AMS or Azure based or something local like with HashiCorp, or if you want to do an in-memory KMS, all of those are available to you. And what we'll do is we'll encrypt the customers underscore JSON topic itself. And really what we want to do is we want to set the gateway up to effectively store nothing. So that way the keys are managed by your key management tool, and we're using the best of breed capabilities over there. And we're applying those encryption rules and those policies to the specific sections of the record itself. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll deploy this particular interceptor. And then we'll go back to the topic. So we'll go back to customers.json or customers underscore JSON. And you'll see here the data that was already written hasn't undergone the encryption yet. Now, I have a couple of records here that I'll just kind of copy and paste into our produce section when it comes to testing messages. So what we'll do is we're still in the Conduktor gateway view. We'll go ahead and produce that message. We'll copy and paste that there. So George, my counterpart, his record will actually be encrypted, and what we'll do is we'll generate that record, or sorry, we'll produce that record to the system. So we'll scroll down. What you'll see here is we'll produce the message. You'll see the email and the last name, and we'll go over here. We'll refresh the page, and you'll see that the email and the last name are actually encrypted now that the policy has been successfully applied. Now, the data itself has physically undergone a transformation. We've actually done the encryption, so we're not doing the masking. The masking policy actually provides an exemption for the admin user, even though technically the admin user should have access to everything. The data itself has now undergone an encryption with the particular key that we're using. So what's great about this situation is that we can also selectively apply a decryption capability as well. So we have the same policy, just flipped around for working with other forms of encrypted data, whether that's the customer's.json order, or maybe you have a different KMS, or maybe there's other rules that you want to apply when it comes to implementing that governance. And really, this is where Conduktor shines, is actually implementing governance at a central point, so that way you can tame the chaos of all of these producers, all of these consumers, using their own encryption keys, using their own encryption standards that may or may not follow best practices or the organization's policy.
No, and I was going to say that we've been focusing so far on securing the data, which is a step one. But let's try to talk a bit more about how we keep the data flowing even when things go wrong, right? And that's kind of a high interest that we could see on many of the people as part of the poll. If we can talk about a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Or do you want to just press with the last few slides that we got here?
Yeah, if you want to go to the next slide.
Yep. All right, cool. All right, so when it comes to security, we tend to talk about from a particularly technical perspective, but really what we're talking about is protecting the business. And so the continuity of operations and those concepts kind of get looped in there. And so we know that one of the things that you guys care about from the poll that you just told us was Kafka needs to stay online. It needs to be, we need to have a DR plan in place, even during those outages. And so Conduktor is one of the few, if only, capabilities in the industry that actually allows you to do that in a manner that's completely seamless. So you're going to need some required capabilities that there's a chance that most organizations haven't really implemented yet. So you're going to need to have a seamless failover that's completely transparent to the applications. You're going to need to find a way to do automated restarts. You're going to want some tailored end-to-end monitoring, and some of the solutions that you may use today may be expensive or incomplete or both. And then additionally, you're going to probably want to do some chaos testing as a form of insurance to make sure that you guys don't hit those errors. So how it's done today is, all the applications are kind of islands onto themselves. Failover is configured manually. If something goes down, all those applications have to be updated individually, which can take days sometimes. And typically the business doesn't have days if it wants to have a successful continuity of operations plan in place. And so ultimately ends up being this really fragile, brittle solution that when it breaks, it tends to be broken for quite some time. And what happens with Conduktor is we have a capability called cluster switching that includes some of the required capabilities I mentioned earlier. So what we provide is instant, if not near instant failover with no delays. That's completely transparent to the applications. And so what happens behind the scenes is we know the cluster is not healthy, and so we can provide you with the capability to automate on whatever kinds of conditions you want to fail over to another cluster. And so those apps keep running even under pressure. And more importantly, we also have a capability to perform chaos testing. So what will happen is, let's say you want to test application latency or inject some weird headers or something like that. And you can perform some of that testing tailored to those applications as a bit of insurance to make sure that during a failover scenario, you guys are well equipped to handle that. So basically, with Shield and some of those capabilities, it's a stressful place to be because if things go wrong, they can go bad very quickly. But with Conductor Shield, you can kind of get ahead of those issues, and you'll more importantly have the capabilities and controls to be successful. All right, I'll hand it back over to you, Jorge.
No, thank you, Mike. Yeah, we just wanted to give some time to respond to some of the questions that we are getting. I can see a couple here coming in. Someone saying, Sushant saying, the encryption happens at the Conduktor level. What about the data from the producer application to Conduktor?
So that's a great question. So from Conduktor's perspective, the producer thinks it's actually talking to Kafka. And so when it's producing, so I guess we can maybe clarify two kinds of scenarios. So if the producer is already producing encrypted data, then Conduktor will potentially re-encrypt the data if you want to apply another encryption policy to that data that's already encrypted. However, if it's just producing data and you want it to encrypt data at rest in Kafka, what will happen is based on the security or the encryption algorithm you want to apply, it'll then talk to the producer as though it was a Kafka broker saying, hey, I got your message, go ahead and send me another message. But meanwhile, on the back end, the kind of sleight of hand that Conduktor does is it applies that encryption policy, works with the KMS to get apply the necessary keys, and then writes that data to the physical Kafka cluster. And so that data will be encrypted. And then when it comes to a read, assuming a consumer then goes to read that message, if you have the appropriate policy applied, you can then decrypt that message for that particular consumer. Or let's say you want to selectively decrypt parts of the record for that particular consumer group, you can do that as well.
Great. We've got another one from Barbara saying, do you provide any tools around Kafka lags, kind of investigate them, automatically recover, and provide logs or insights into possible causes?
Yes, we do. Yep. We have a bunch of fields and metrics specifically tailored to consumer lag. We actually have alerts pre-built for it as well.
All right. And I think we are out of time. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Mike, for your help today. And yeah, we'll see you on our next webinar. Please visit our website. You can find our Shield product page where you can find more information and more video demos.
Yeah.
Thanks
Oh,
for
and
watching.
and by the way, don't take my word for it. Go down community version of Conduktor, and you can experience it for yourselves.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.